Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 939A, and today's date is April 7th, 2016, and the title of the episode is The Economic Recovery Mirage is Fading Fast. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, today we see the market is down, gold is back up, and once again, we're starting to see the market fluctuate quite a bit. And we can see that this is going to continually happen as we move throughout this year. And most likely we'll see more down markets than up markets, but they'll continually try to push the market up. Again, gold, as we see it move up, it's going to be harder and harder for the U.S. government central bankers to suppress the gold. And we're going to see higher lows and higher highs as we move forward. So we're going to have to watch that very, very carefully. Because as we see gold move up by $50, $70, $80, maybe even $100, and they try to suppress it by, 20, 30, 40, 50, we need to look at this because this is an indicator that they are losing control. Gold is pushing up. As more and more people see this, they're going to scratch their head and say, hey, maybe I should be buying some gold right now, and that will push the market up even further. So this is something we need to watch. Now, the economy here in the United States is continually falling apart. The Mirage, it's fading away. And we're seeing that the initial jobless claims for 3 consecutive weeks, we had an increase. But remember, they're manipulating unemployment. So they need to manipulate initial jobless claims because it wouldn't make any sense. Let's see, unemployment is down to 5%. It was at 4.9% at one period. But initial jobless claims are rising. People would scratch their heads and say, this doesn't make sense, this can't be. So what they do is they manipulate all of these numbers because they need it to correspond, but it's getting more and more difficult as time goes on. Because as we know, there are continual layoffs occurring. It's not like, oh, we just laid off 100 people. We're seeing tens of thousands of people being laid off. Continuing claims, they are rising. They have jumped. And we're going to see them continually manipulate these numbers until the very end. And when we look at the chart of unemployment, the initial jobless claims, we can see how it follows the line of their story. Because they need it to be this way to keep the illusion alive. Now, very interestingly, we talk about bubbles everywhere. We know there's a real estate bubble. We know there's a student loan bubble. Auto loan bubble, treasury bond bubble, derivatives bubble. And very interestingly, everyone keeps talking about, how there are so many jobs out there. And of course, this is coming from the corporate media, the U.S. government central bankers. And we talk about the opposite, how there are no jobs out there, that this is a complete illusion. And people are sending out resumes, getting no response. A lot of people are looking at it and saying there's no place to send my resume. Now, they're telling everyone to go back to school to get an education because once you get that education, you can come out of school and you can get a job. But what we're finding out is that many of the graduates today can't find this job. So they're living with their parents, taking on whatever part-time job they have, and it's very difficult to pay back their student loans. Well, what we're seeing right now is that 40% of those students, they've stopped making payments. Actually, many of them have never even made a payment. And the Department of Education, they can't figure out why this is happening. About 1 in 6 borrowers, or 3.6 million, were in default on $56 billion in student debt, meaning they had gone at least a year without making a payment. Well, there are others that have gone 3 months, 6 months, but they're not counted yet in this. 3 million more, owing roughly $66 billion, were at least a month behind. Meantime, another 3 million owing almost $110 billion were in forbearance or deferment, meaning they have received permission to temporarily halt payments. Now, one of the ways you can do this is to say, I'm unemployed right now. Now, Navient Corp, which services the student loans and offers different payment plans tied to income, saying that they're trying to reach these borrowers about 230 to 300 times through letters, emails, texts, calls, any way they possibly can. And 90% of the borrowers, they don't respond. And they don't make payments. And they're scratching their heads trying to figure out, I don't understand. The economy's strong. There's plenty of jobs out there. That's what the government's telling us. Why can't these people pay their loans? Well, when we look at this, we realize that, guess what? There are no jobs. This is just another indicator showing us that if everything was fine and the government was telling us the truth, people coming out of college would have these incredible paying jobs, but they don't. So they're not finding jobs. They're not paying back their loans. And guess what? They can't file bankruptcy with student loans. So this is a problem. It's stuck with them for the rest of their lives. And we can see at this point that this bubble, this student loan bubble, it's going to pop. Because when the students, and we see the numbers 40% already, as this grows, the U.S. will not be able to collect on trillions of dollars. Because as we can see, it's getting harder and harder for people to find work. It's not getting better at all. Now, last time we talked about Class 8 trucking, and we talked about how, going back to the beginning of this year, it was down 48% in truck orders. But what we're seeing right now is that the Class 8 truck data went from bad to worse. Orders for new big rigs plunged and inventories of unsold trucks soared to their highest levels since just before the financial crisis. About 67,000 Class 8 trucks are sitting on dealer lots completely unsold. And what we see right now is that we're seeing Class 8 truck new net orders declining since the beginning of this year. Not improving whatsoever. Now, if we look at U.S. railroads, they are down by 13.7% from the same point of last year. And their carloads, containers, trailers, deliveries, they are all down. This tells us at this point that there's no rebound in economic growth. Everything is slowing down. We look at corporations. We see their earnings this year are completely a gigantic disaster. They're continually laying off people. They're buying back their stock, pushing the stock market up, and sales, revenue, and everything else is declining. This is not a recovery. This is a complete disaster. Now, Puerto Rico, as we mentioned yesterday, decided to create legislation where they are not going to pay back any of the debt right now. And right now we see that they're going to be implementing capital controls to restrict the outflow of cash and to try to stabilize the entire economy there. And the situation in Puerto Rico is getting messier and messier each and every day. And this really looks like what has happened in Greece and Cyprus and Europe, and now it's spreading over here in the United States. And we have many different states that are in the same place, where they're teetering on a complete default. And most likely looking at capital controls. And we're going to see this happen as time goes on. Because what we're seeing right now is a complete implosion of the system. Now, yes, the central bank is going to continually try to prop the system up. They're going to do whatever they possibly can to keep the illusion alive that everything is fine. But when we really look at the situation and we look at the real economic indicators, we see that whatever they're telling us can't be true. Now, if we only look at the stock market, we can say, oh, okay, yeah, everything looks good. But if you look at everything else that makes up the entire economy, you realize the entire system is crashing at this point. The same thing happened in 1929, 2001, 2008. The stock market was hitting all-time new highs, and behind the scenes, in the cover of night, everything was falling apart. But of course, nobody wants to go there until that day when everything comes to a screeching halt. Now, out in Japan, the finance ministry plans to increase the number of 10,000 yen bills in circulation because they're looking at what is going on here. We know they're in negative interest rates, and more people are hoarding cash right now. And the total amount of cash stashed at home is estimated to have surged by nearly 5 trillion yen to some 40 trillion yen in the past year. And don't think it's just Japan. Think about it. If there's negative interest rates, why would you keep your currency in the bank? It makes no sense to do so because you end up paying them. And we know in all the other areas throughout Europe where there's negative interest rates, the people are doing the same thing. And they should be, because there's no reason to keep your currency in the bank. Now, we have other reasons to keep the currency out of the bank because we know the bail-ins are coming. We know they're going to be locking down the banks. We know there's going to be capital controls. And you will not be able to get whatever you have in there out. And this is why we've been saying that everyone needs to be prepared for what is coming. You should keep cash on hand. Of course, don't tell anyone where it is. But you should also keep gold and silver on hand. Could be junk silver or copper or anything else that has value that you can trade later on. And everyone needs to look at their situation and say, okay, if I have 100 in cash, is that enough? If I have 200 in cash, is that enough? If I have whatever amount, is that enough for when the system completely falls apart? Because as we know, when everything starts to rapidly fall apart, most likely we will see inflation, where the cost of goods will continually rise. Well, actually, the value of your currency will fall, and it'll make it look like that the prices of products are increasing. So we need to include that in our calculation of what you'll actually need. And if you have gold and silver, those are just going to rise as time goes on. It's an insurance policy. So this is why everyone has been saying, listen, keep these things at home, make sure you're prepared, and don't forget about the food, water, and everything like that. Because as we know, as the currency is devalued, you don't want to go out and say, oh, look at that, bread is at $35. Oh, now it's at $45. Instead, have the food in your house already. Have the toiletries in your house already, or your apartment, wherever you are. This way, you are prepared. You don't have to worry about it. You're buying it at this point instead of waiting. And especially when that time comes, people are going to be running to the stores trying to get whatever they possibly can. And this is why, not just myself, but a lot of people are saying you need to have these things on hand and ready. And I would make sure you have at least 3 months. If you can do 6 months, that's even better. If you can do a year, that's even better, because we don't know how long this is going to be. A lot of people are saying it's going to be 6 months. Some people are saying it's a year. But we don't know at this point. And this is why everyone needs to start preparing and getting ready for what is coming. If you haven't started, you can go to many different places to find emergency foods, like lifereliance.com. You can customize your order. They have seeds, water filtration system, anything that you need. But whatever you're doing, keep doing it. If you found a place that you like, keep doing what you're doing. If you don't like that place, you can try lifereliance.com. It doesn't really matter. But you need to prepare, because as we can see at this point, this economy is coming down. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.